men. Is the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite.
Good evening. Patricia Hearst is now cooperating with authorities who for months have wanted her to detail the alleged crimes of her companions in the underground. That cooperation apparently began yesterday after a judge delayed imposing her bank robbery sentence. Richard Threlkeld reports from San Francisco.
Patricia Hearst was late getting back to her jail cell last night from her day in court because she'd spent most of the day telling her story to the FBI, finally turning state's evidence in hopes of escaping any more trials and convictions and prison sentences. CBS News has learned from several sources close to the case that Ms. Hearst has now answered many of the questions she refused to answer during her trial, recounting some of her 15-month odyssey in the underground and in damning detail bearing witness against her one-time radical comrades. Most important, the FBI now has Ms. Hearst's own description of the SLA robbery of a bank near Sacramento last year, in which a pregnant woman bystander was killed. Ms. Hearst, who reportedly was outside the bank and did not participate in the actual robbery, named a half-dozen members of the robbery team, including sources say her old SLA companions, William and Emily Harris. Ms. Hearst also reportedly identified which of the robbers fired the fatal shot, which she said was fired by accident. Ms. Hearst's testimony is vital to authorities in Sacramento who have thus far prosecuted only Ms. Hearst's old boyfriend, Stephen Solia, for that crime. Neither the Harrises nor Ms. Hearst nor anyone else has been charged, presumably for lack of just the kind of evidence Ms. Hearst has now provided. And it's important to Ms. Hearst as well. As an accomplice to that robbery, she could be charged with murder. Today, based on her startling testimony, the various prosecutors in her case met in San Francisco to discuss what next. It now seems likely the government will call Ms. Hearst as a prosecution witness against those she named in the Sacramento robbery and in return agree not to prosecute her. Her decision to cooperate could also have some bearing on how much more time she will spend in prison for her own bank robbery conviction, but probably will have no effect on what happens in Los Angeles, where she's to be prosecuted on 11 more criminal charges. So now, Patricia Hearst has come full circle, from kidnapped victim to urban guerrilla to state's witness. And tomorrow, she'll be back in court to appear for pretrial motions on the Los Angeles charges. In reluctant reunion with the two SLA survivors, she has now damned, with her own words, William and Emily Harris. Richard Threlkeld, CBS News, San Francisco.
Introducing colors that come alive. Satan red. Green thumb. Orange peel. Little boy blue. Lemon meringue. The coolest, hottest, wildest colors. Hundreds of colors, only from Pittsburgh Paints. The Color Company.
When you want a tasty snack, snack goes granola.
Snack goes the family. Here's granola in crunchy bars. New from Nature Valley. 100% natural ingredients, no additives, no preservatives.
Rolled oats and honey, coconut and cinnamon flavors.
All delicious.
Snack goes granola.
Wholesome treats your whole family will enjoy. New Nature Valley granola bars.
Snack goes granola.
At a White House news conference today, President Ford found himself being questioned about a remark not from the Republican presidential race, but from the Democratic. Bob Schieffer reports.
The president said the Pennsylvania primary later this month will determine whether Jimmy Carter's controversial remarks on the ethnic purity of neighborhoods have hurt Carter as a candidate. He did not criticize Carter directly, but went on to outline his own views on the sensitive subject.
I would not use that term to describe any of my policies, period. I do feel that an ethnic heritage is a great treasure of this country, and I don't think that federal action should be used to destroy that ethnic treasure. There are federal laws that are on the statute books. I have sworn to uphold the law in any case, all cases, and this administration will.
Don Connolly had dropped by the White House earlier, refueling speculation that he may be the president's choice as a running mate. But Mr. Ford said no offers were made today and no endorsements received, adding he won't make his vice presidential choice known until during the Republican convention. Finally, on the subject of politics, the president said even though Jimmy Carter continues to win primary victories, he still thinks the Democratic candidate in November will be Hubert Humphrey. Bob Schieffer, CBS News in the White House Rose Garden.
In Atlanta today, the candidate who made that ethnic purity remark trotted out supporters to try to stem the reaction to it. Ed Rabel reports.
Jimmy Carter took his campaign back home to Georgia, where he denied that his black support had deteriorated because he used the words ethnic purity. Carter said a poll taken in Pennsylvania over the weekend after he apologized for the term showed strong support among blacks. Still, a rally for Carter in Atlanta was marred by a demonstration led by Georgia State Representative Hosea Williams, who called Carter a racist. Carter claims Williams has always opposed him politically, even when Carter was governor of Georgia. In a move to overcome criticism from Williams and some other black leaders, the Carter campaign asked for a public showing of support by local blacks, including the Reverend Martin Luther King Sr.
I want to find that man who has lived so perfect that he's never made a mistake. But if there is a forgiving heart, and if one who stands to apologize, then this nation, this state, and everyone else have no choice but to accept it. I have a forgiving heart. So, Governor, I'm with you all the way.
From here, Carter took his campaign to Pennsylvania, where he says other candidates and state officials have ganged up against him in the state's April 27th primary. Ed Rabel, CBS News, Atlanta.
A congressional conference committee agreed today on a compromise bill to reorganize the Federal Elections Commission in accordance with the Supreme Court's ruling. But for the presidential candidates awaiting federal matching campaign funds, there's still some more waiting. Mariah McLaughlin reports.
The Senate and House conferees finally came up with a new federal election law that most on Capitol Hill think President Ford will accept. It provides presidentially appointed commissioners, candidates with less than 10% of the popular vote in 2 successive primaries will not collect matching funds. There will be strict limitations on the amount of money candidates can receive from individuals and political committees. And corporations and unions would be tightly regulated on contribution solicitations. The tentative agreement reached today will be finalized on April 27th, but there are a lot of procedures it must still go through before the Commission can get back to giving out those matching funds. So presidential candidates who are having money troubles aren't likely to see any new federal dollars until mid-May. But some of the Senate and House conferees said they thought the presidential candidates would be lucky if they realized any impact from the release of matching funds by the mid-May primaries in Maryland and Michigan. Mariah McLaughlin, CBS News, Washington.
Morris Udall was campaigning in downtown Pittsburgh when the word came that he would probably not get federal matching funds in time to finance his Pennsylvania primary campaign. When Udall was asked to contribute to a children's hospital, it became apparent he was near the bottom of his financial barrel.
Oh, I gotta have more money than that. Here. Anybody got $1?
Yeah, I got $1. Udall was counting heavily on some $300,000 in matching funds to finance his Pennsylvania effort. Tomorrow, a massive direct mail appeal will be launched to raise as much as possible from the public. Cash on hand today totaled $20,000, but outstanding bills and loans came to $240,000. There's no money for paid commercials, so Udall is making an effort to do as many free news interviews as possible.
Planned on a kind of a major media effort here. I find that when I can get known, when people see me and hear me and find out who I am, I do very well. But compared to Jackson and Carter, I'm not well known yet, and we had planned to use this federal matching money to overcome that barrier.
Things have gotten so bad for Udall financially, he's had to give up his chartered airplane and now goes to campaign appearances commercially. The last lunch on the Udall plane consisted of Spam and pretzels. Ike Pappas, CBS News, Pittsburgh.
Udall's is not the only campaign affected by the cutoff of matching dollars. At the end of March, according to official reports or campaign spokesmen, only President Ford and Henry Jackson had surplus campaign funds. Ronald Reagan reported about $900,000 deficit, but that does not take into account more than $1 million received since his nationally televised address. Jimmy Carter says he's $185,000 in the red, and George Wallace's spokesman says only we're solvent. The Internal Revenue Service has revoked the tax-exempt status of the Associated Milk Producers Incorporated and has billed the nation's largest milk cooperative for almost $8 million in back taxes and penalties. The cooperative is taking the dispute to tax court. The tax action apparently grows out of illegal campaign contributions and alleged antitrust violations by the cooperative. The Senate has passed and sent to the House a substitute public service jobs bill with a $5.3 billion price tag, almost as costly as the bill President Ford vetoed, and that raised the likelihood of another veto. The money is to create new jobs and to help state and local governments avoid laying off workers. The Dow Jones Industrial Average picked up almost 13 points today. Volume on the New York Stock Exchange was 16 million shares. The average price per share jumped 26 cents on the New York Exchange. It dropped 1 cent on the American. New York's big city bank today announced a 50-cent a month service fee on its Master Charge credit card holders, and other banks are now expected to follow suit.
Sometimes, the people we care about the most, we see the least. Make those special moments count even more with a deluxe SX70 land camera. As you watch the pictures developing in minutes before your eyes, there are no gaps of time, or age, or distance. Polaroid's SX70. Share it with people you love.
Let my child suffer from teething pain? Not when there's Ambisol.
Suffer with denture pain? No need to with Ambisol.
Suffer from a cold sore? Not when there's Ambisol.
Ambisol works to kill minor mouth pain on contact. Look, irritated nerve endings in the mouth. Ambisol with 3 anesthetics deadens pain immediately for hours of relief. So when denture pain, toothache, cold sores, or teething pain strikes, use Ambisol. Works to kill pain on contact.
The House Judiciary Committee has agreed on and sent to the House the first gun control bill in 8 years, a measure to forbid the manufacture or import of cheap pistols known as Saturday night specials. Bernard Shaw reports.
Committee Republicans and Democrats haven't cooperated on an issue like this in years, not since 1968 when they passed the Firearms Control Act. Chairman Peter Rodino says this time it was a matter of conscience and compromise. Compromise by Michigan Democrat John Conyers, whose crime subcommittee hearings persuaded him to push for the toughest legislation ever. But Rodino pleading and getting Conyers to drop a proposed federal handgun tracing center and agreeing to a less costly dealer's license registration fee. Conyers said it was a matter of whether I wanted a bill this year. Republican Tom Railsback of Illinois sponsored the substitute bill, which bans Saturday night specials not now privately owned and sets mandatory sentences for felonies committed with such guns. Railsback says President Ford will go along with this bill, and Rodino says we're going to remind him that this is pretty much what he asked for in his crime message. Railsback expects all-out war from the National Rifle Association, but he warns we'll be monitoring them, and if they distort or misrepresent our bill, we're going to take them on. To get committee passage, Chairman Rodino argued behind the scenes, telling some members Bobby Kennedy was killed by one of these guns. Rodino and Railsback are optimistic, and they're hoping for support from citizens' lobbies to persuade members on what's expected to be a close House vote in this election year. Bernard Shaw, CBS News, Washington.
A gunman stormed Baltimore's temporary city hall today, shot and killed 1 councilman and critically wounded 2 other city officials before police gunned him down. Connie Chung reports.
It was around lunchtime that 35-year-old Charles Hopkins came to the Baltimore City Hall offices. He was apparently upset that he would be evicted from his home. He asked to see the mayor, but before explaining his problem, he allegedly shot the mayor's administrative assistant, Kathleen Noland. She is in serious condition. He then went to the city council offices, reportedly shot and killed Councilman Dominic Leone, and took another councilman hostage. Hopkins took the hostage, Carol Fitzgerald, to another office where police confronted him. He allegedly held a gun to Fitzgerald's head and told police to back off. But police rushed inside the office when they heard a shot. During the scuffle, one policeman was wounded. He is in fair condition. Councilman Fitzgerald was shot. He is in serious condition. And the assailant was shot several times. He is reportedly in serious condition. The suspect has not yet been charged. He had reportedly attended a city council budget meeting yesterday, but got no satisfaction then. That's apparently why he came back today. Connie Chung, CBS News, Baltimore.
Manson cultist Sandra Good and her roommate Susan Murphy were sentenced to prison in Sacramento today for conspiring to threaten the lives of business and government leaders they said were polluting the environment. Miss Good got 15 years, Miss Murphy 5.
Perhaps you already know how special Betty Crocker snacking cake is. But do you know it's even better now? There are more good things in every flavor. More pecans and almonds, more raisins and chocolate chips, more walnuts. And Betty Crocker snacking cake is easier now. Just add water, mix, bake, and serve in the same pan. Better and easier now. That's Betty Crocker snacking cake.
As an air temp dealer, I sell much more than a top-quality
line of air conditioners. My whole livelihood is based on giving you your money's worth.
And I built my reputation on just that. And when my reputation and your money are at stake,
you better believe the air conditioner I offer you is the best your money can buy.
That's why we're air temp dealers.
Call this toll-free number for your nearest dealer. Air Temp. All we make are air conditioners, so we have to make the best your money can buy.
More than 2 decades ago, the rationale for U.S. military involvement in Southeast Asia was the domino theory. That is, if one country fell to the communists, others would follow. Today, while not actually using that phrase, Secretary of State Kissinger applied the theory to Western Europe. He told a Washington meeting of newspaper editors that if communists gained power in a major European government, other European countries, quote, would be tempted to move in the same direction. And that, he said, would have long-term and very serious consequences to which the United States could not be indifferent. In central Finland today, a powerful explosion leveled a munitions factory, killing at least 41 persons, critically injuring more than 20 others. Susan Peterson narrates this report.
The explosion flattened the munitions factory about 250 miles northwest of Helsinki. The force of the blast was felt more than 15 miles away. Only the concrete floor of the building and some twisted machinery remained. Most of the victims were women, working the early morning shift. It is believed that more victims may still be buried under the rubble and that the death toll may climb even higher. Within minutes of the explosion, ambulances and troops were rushed to the disaster scene. The state-owned munitions works was the area's biggest employer, providing jobs for 500 people. Most of its work was done for the Finnish military. The cause of the explosion is still unknown. The Finnish government went into emergency session to name a special committee to investigate. The blast is by far the worst in Finland's peacetime history. Susan Peterson, CBS News, London.
The civil war, which has torn Lebanon apart and threatens to engulf all the Middle East, is 1 year old today. There's a semblance of peace there now, held together by a fragile ceasefire, but that could be brought down by differences between Muslim and Christian forces over Syrian military intervention in Lebanon. The Christians have hailed that Syrian presence as a decisive step toward a lasting peace. The Muslims charge it is the forerunner of a large-scale Syrian invasion. Mike Lee in Beirut has a report on Lebanon, now in its 2nd year of war.
There are some parts of Beirut that still look like a picture postcard, but it is a sad city. More than 13,000 lives have been lost, 25,000 men, women, and children have been wounded, and hundreds of thousands have been forced to either leave their homes or live in basements and hallways. 26 ceasefires have been declared and broken. The 27th is bending with almost daily sporadic outbursts of shooting.
It began in April of last year, when a busload of Palestinians was killed in Christian territory. The long, smoldering political feud between the Lebanese left and right broke into open warfare. Week by week, hundreds of gunmen and civilians lost their lives as rockets, mortars, and machine gun fire became a way of life. The capital, although never officially partitioned, was severed into Christian and Muslim sectors. with snipers killing anyone who moved through the no man's land. It was called a religious war, but was actually a class struggle with religious overtones. The Maronite Christians had for 30 years enjoyed a political dominance built into the national charter, and the new Muslim majority had been pushing in vain for reform. The stalemate was broken by the Palestinian refugees who trained, equipped, and in many cases fought alongside the Muslims. It was a war with no winners, only losers. In a massive Muslim assault, the Christians lost the coastal town of Damour. Hundreds perished and the town was demolished. In retaliation, Christian phalanges surrounded the Muslim slum of Karantina and massacred many of its inhabitants. In the wake of Damour and Karantina, a promising truce was imposed by Syrian President Assad. Reforms were agreed to, but never implemented. The country slid back into war less than a month ago, with leftists under the militant command of Kamal Jumblat pushing the Christians out of the hotel district and pounding their once beautiful mountain villages with heavy artillery. This latest truce is no more than a scaled-down war, and those driven from their homes dare not return. These Christians are refugees in their own country. Their villages have been overrun or threatened by Jumblat forces. For them, the war is not knowing where their relatives are, where their food will come from, or where the future will lead them. The Muslims have their refugee camps too. The survivors of Karantina have been living in rundown beachfront cabins, fed and cared for by the Palestinian commandos. The victims of this war are waiting for the politicians to end it, to put their country and their lives back together. Mike Lee, CBS News, Beirut.
All the votes are in from yesterday's elections in the Israeli-occupied West Bank, and the results show that supporters of the Palestine Liberation Organization, communists, and Palestinian nationalists swept to victory. The only places conservative, pro-Israeli candidates won were in small, politically insignificant villages. An Israeli official said the election represented a changing of the guard of Arab leadership that Israel would have to learn to live with, unquote. In Washington, a House committee set aside objections and, in effect, paved the way for congressional approval of 6 C-130 cargo planes to Egypt. And President Sadat revealed that an Egyptian mission shortly will go to Peking to seek Chinese arms. History's longest airplane hijacking has turned into a stalemate between the 3 Muslim hijackers and the government of Libya, where they'd hoped to receive asylum. The Philippine Airlines jet arrived in Benghazi today, 6 days after being taken in the southern Philippines. Libya refused to allow any of the hijackers or their 10 hostages to leave the plane and instead opened negotiations with the hijackers. That was still going on late today.
The volunteer firemen are ready for dessert.
Looks like we cooked too much meatloaf. Let's wrap the leftovers and get them into the refrigerator. Reynolds wrap? Just to wrap meatloaf? Sure. Reynolds wrap protects best. It seals tight, helps keep air out and flavor in. See, that plastic is opening. Most of them will. And I can reheat in Reynolds wrap, too. When something's left, you sure wrap it right.
Reynolds wrap, the best wrap around.
But today, there'll be a change in weather. We're going to have rain and thunderstorms.
If you sometimes have a hard time staying awake during the day, maybe you had a hard time getting to sleep the night before. If you occasionally have trouble falling asleep, try Nitol. Nitol can help make you drowsy so you can get to sleep. And if you sleep at night, there's a good chance you'll stay awake during the day. For occasional sleeplessness, remember, Nitol.
Well, there's another chapter to report in the story of the World War II Moscow romance between an American naval officer and a Russian actress. The actress Zoya Fyodorova, now 64, said in Moscow today she's being allowed to travel to the United States to visit the daughter born of that romance, 30-year-old Victoria. Victoria herself, an actress, came here a year ago to meet her father, retired Admiral Jackson Tate, you'll remember. She's married to an American now and is expecting a baby in May. Her mother wants to be on hand for that. The mother never married after the Soviets broke up her romance and sent her to prison for 8 years. She would not speculate today on whether she will see Admiral Tate during her 3-month visit. The city of Minot, North Dakota is making all-out preparations for a flood that's expected to hit the town by Saturday. The 12,000 residents of low-lying areas are standing by to evacuate by tomorrow, hoping to take their most precious belongings with them. Meanwhile, 15-foot dikes are being put up along the river. The Minot Daily News calls the anticipated flood the greatest crisis in the city's 90-year history. There's a mystery in Chicago. The plot involves a body with the wrong name, some fat insurance policies, and a missing man. The homicide unit commander of the Chicago police summed it up this way for reporters: anyone who can unravel this one deserves the Pulitzer Prize. Well, here's Bill Curtis's entry.
3 weeks ago, a body was pulled out of the Chicago River. Identification unknown. The kind of random death attributed to alcohol and drugs that didn't even cause an investigation of foul play. The mystery began 2 days later when a man walked into the Cook County morgue and identified the body as that of Estelle Blevins, 32, of Clearwater, Florida, a broker with Merrill Lynch. But police believe it was Blevins himself who identified the body. In effect, he signed his own death certificate. For identification, he gave the name William Hamilton, a brother-in-law who lived in Jackson, Michigan. The story unfolded today when Chicago police talked with the real Hamilton in Michigan.
Mr. Hamilton at this time tells us that on the 29th of March, Mr. Blevins came to him and told him that he had a scheme going to make quite a bit of money on some insurance that he had on himself, and that if Hamilton would go along with them, that he would be in for some of the money.
Within the last year, Blevins took out several life insurance policies worth more than $250,000. Meanwhile, the body has been identified as Joseph Tallarico, a retired Navy diver who was visiting his sister in Chicago.
I feel horrible. Rotten. I think it's a wrong thing, and he was a good man, and I think he deserves a little better than being thrown in the water and then having his body cremated. I think they've sort of taken away my right as his sister.
The mystery is not over. Police are now searching for Blevins and several others they believe are involved in the fraud scheme, and now are questioning how Tallarico died. It's still an open book in what the Chicago police call the most puzzling case they have confronted in years. Bill Curtis for CBS News, Chicago.
And that's the way it is. Tuesday, April 13th, 1976. This is Walter Cronkite, CBS News. Good night.
Backache, painful, nagging backache, muscular aches and pains from overexertion or everyday stress and strain. When they strike, you can get relief with rubs, or heating pads, or other surface remedies. Or you can take Doan's pills. Doan's works different than surface remedies to ease painful backache. Doan's analgesic pain-relieving action often brings hours of relief. Doan's pills work different than surface remedies to relieve nagging backache.
The new aircraft carrier USS Nimitz, home for 5,000 men, is cooled with air conditioning equipment designed and built by the engineers at York. And to keep your home refreshingly cool, York engineers designed the dependable springtime machines. Whole house air conditioning that provides refreshing, spring-like comfort all year round, year after year after year. York, building a second century of quality for those who won't settle for second best.
This has been the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite. See superstars of comedy and sports cavort with Flip Wilson when he stages his outrageous version of the Winter Olympics. Flip Wilson's Sun Valley Olympiad, tomorrow night here on CBS.
Stay tuned for Eyewitness News next on Channel 5, WTVF, Nashville.
You may think that Mercury Montego and Olds Cutlass give you the same values for the money. But Montego gives you a V8 engine, automatic transmission, power brakes at no extra cost. Two-door Cutlass doesn't. Now this new luxury edition Montego adds vinyl roof, opera windows, sport wheel covers, and contour seats. Sticker priced hundreds less than a comparably equipped Cutlass Supreme. That's value. But with quantities limited, see the luxury edition Montego soon.